Good Friday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Hope your weekend is off to a great start. Browns minicamp over, so the players go away until training camp in about 6 weeks. Former NFL head coach Eric Mangini on the Browns quarterback competition.
I feel like you might be a Browns beat writer, Colin, because this hype train in Cleveland is so ridiculous right now, and I get it. There is a desperation coming off of Deshaun Watson for some quarterback to emerge, for some hope to be there for the franchise, and they thought Shador could potentially be a high pick for him, and then they get him in the 5th round. So it exploded in Cleveland the second that he got here. And what Kevin Stefanski is trying to do is he's trying to tamper it down. He's trying to push it down. And you see, all of his reps have been with the back-end guys. He hasn't gotten any reps with the ones. To me, that's a good decision, because as soon as he gets in with the ones, then the hype train's gonna roll even further. I'd say the numbers have to be taken with a gigantic grain of salt. There's a lot of learning going on for him, and to see the numbers, that's positive. But he's also working versus the back end of the roster, so his numbers should be a little bit higher just based on that as well.
And again, they're not in pads yet, so we'll wait and see, but it's interesting. Former NFL head coach Herm Edwards on Shador Sanders, what trait he has that's most NFL ready?
He understands the game very well. I mean, this guy's been schooled since he was a little kid by his dad. He's been around it. He's seen it. He understands the mentality of it all. You know, he grew up in it. He's watched it. You know, his father, maybe you can say one of the best athletes ever played the game. And I think sometimes, you know, when people look at Deion Sanders and they don't know him, they don't understand Deion Sanders is one of the smartest football players ever played the position. So this guy is not just, talented. I mean, he's a study. I mean, he gets it. You know, he knows how to prepare. All those things are in his favor.
And it's, again, if he is able to transfer that to the NFL, the Browns probably have a pretty darn good quarterback. Deuce Staley, Browns running backs coach, what he has seen from the 2 rookies, Dylan Sampson and Quinshon Judkins.
Been doing a good job. Been putting in the time, been asking all the good questions, staying after meetings, going over film. Been doing a good job.
How would you compare his style of play to other running backs?
Well, we're out here in pajamas right now. When we put on some armor, I'll let you know.
How about Dylan? What has impressed you for getting to see his skill set?
Yeah, another young player who's been doing an awesome job. It all starts in the building first, having good meetings with him and being able to show him as a running back and a receiver. Also meeting with CO, going in there and going over some of the receiver splits and routes, and just being able to just take his game and expand it. He's been awesome.
So CO is Chad O'Shea. That is the receivers coach for the Browns. So Sampson trying to learn some of the routes from that slot position. We'll talk a little bit later in the show about that as well. Nick Chubb is on to the Houston Texans, but he did leave Browns fans a message in part. Isn't goodbye to what we built. It's a thank you for the trust, passion, and moments that made me feel like I belonged here from day one, Cleveland. You'll always have a piece of my heart until we meet again. So Nick Chubb, as fond of the Browns fans as they are of him. Guardians offense has struggled mightily to score runs. In the bottom 7 in all of Major League Baseball as far as runs scored. One guy that you can't blame for that has been Jose Ramirez. His production has been outstanding, again, at an MVP level.
This guy's not a good player. He's a superstar. Dare I say superhero. When the land needs a hero, Jose Ramirez is always there. The Cleveland Guardians hit 240 with runners in scoring position. He hits 385. The Cleveland Guardians hit 207 with runners in scoring position and 2 out. He hits 417. He wore out the Angels this year. Right. Had a 3-homer game at their expense in Anaheim, and then did it to him in Cleveland a week and a half ago. Take a look at this. Bottom of the 10th. You need a hero? There he is. Seventh inning or later, the Guardians hit 240. Jose Ramirez hits 384. I'd say he's a one-man band, but that's not fair. Over the weekend, this was Saturday, 3-1 count, bottom of the seventh inning. They need 2 to tie, and he gives it to him on the dinger. He's that good. He's top 5, top 4 in the American League across the board, and just like Teddy Roosevelt, speak softly and carry a big stick. He doesn't say much, man, but he does all his talking with his bat, and he is a lot of fun to watch.
And again, Jose Ramirez and the Guardians out west. They will start a 3-game series with the Seattle Mariners tonight at 10:05. We're going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Brad Ward up first, talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
At the Ohio Lottery, we make Keno fun your way. So go on, pick your wager. Will it be $1, $2, $10, or more? Your call. Then it's as easy as picking up to 10 numbers. Use any inspiration you like. You can even tag on the booster for a chance to boost your winnings up to 10 times. Every few minutes across Ohio, 20 out of 80 possible numbers are drawn. And if enough of yours match, you win. Keno is always fun your way.
We begin by talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Kevin Stefanski met with the entire team before the mandatory minicamp began and kind of laid out his vision for how the Browns can get ready for the 2025 season.
July 22nd, Super Bowl's on February 8th. So that's 201 days. That's 3 preseason games, that's 17 regular season games, it's 3 or 4 postseason games. So that's a lot. How do you prepare for that? Well, we've been doing that, okay? That's what this offseason program's been about, 8-week program, right? And we know what we've been trying to accomplish here. And the number one thing we've been trying to do is that. Before you do anything, you have to have that foundation. You want a strong foundation so you can build on that. This is what we're doing, okay? So this is, hey, mandatory minicamp is here. Got 3 days of this. But why are we building this foundation strong? Why are we doing this? When it's time for training camp, there's no ramping up, okay? We're going. We're going. Because when we get to training camp, we're going. And I say that from a practice standpoint, I say that from a meeting standpoint, I say that from a mentality standpoint. We're going. When you just saw that season, 201 days, we know what that's going to be like. So today, into tomorrow, into Wednesday, into Thursday, we're not canceling minicamp. We're here to work because we got to finish this foundation. It's not done yet.
Welcome in Brad Ward from the Orange and Brown Report, All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. And Brad, when you kind of hear that, it's a little different than the message that we heard the last couple of years.
Yeah, much different, right? A lot more sense of urgency. He's laying out the bigger picture. And I think he makes a good point, and he talked about it at another point, like this mini camp, so much emphasis has been put on this mini camp, of course, because of the quarterback competition and everything else. And what can we learn from this about who's going to be where and what, and evaluation. It's not really about evaluation. I think it's teaching these guys how they want to practice, right? Like, this is how we're going to practice. This is how we want to move. This is, the intensity that we want to operate with this year to prepare for games. So when it does come back, there is no learning phase, teaching phase. Of course, they'll be teaching and learning, but you get what I'm saying, that
Yep.
They are the installation, the teaching, all of that's being done now so that they can hit the ground running come training camp, which I think is the right concept for sure.
It sounds like it's going to be more physical, is kind of, if you read between the lines, and you and I had talked about that last year. Whatever you did last year, do the opposite, because you got off to a slow start and you had too many injuries. I think some of that is because of the way you prepare for a season in training camp.
Yeah, absolutely. It was. I mean, they came in with injuries lingering from the season before, right? Like, they had guys, their offensive line, both their tackles were not ready. And then Deshaun, that whole mess of him coming back and not really knowing what he could do, taking day on, day off, not throwing at certain times. It just felt like it was a very like they were easing into a bath kind of beginning of training camp last year. Like very slow, and let's just take our time and ramp things up. And this sounds like, hey, we're doing that now. We're teaching you how we're going to practice, how we're going to move, and come day one, be ready to rock.
Longtime Browns beat reporter Tony Grossi with kind of his thoughts on the quarterback competition.
I tend to not think that it's as wide open as they say. I think they want to portray it as wide open to keep the rookies competing as hard as they can, and to get to believe that the harder you work, the closer you get to a better role. But I think in the Charles Robinson case, you can substitute any one of those four names for the very same story. There's a path for Flacco to be it. There's a path for Pickett,
and
Dylan Gabriel, but Shedeur got the headline.
So he's referring to Charles Robinson, saying that there's a path to Shedeur being the day one starter. What are your thoughts about the quarterback competition, and who do you think the Browns would prefer win the starting job?
Honestly, I don't know how they are thinking. I think they would obviously prefer one of the younger guys to emerge and just grab the job, right? Like, it doesn't really behoove them to have Joe Flacco start a bunch of games because, as for moving forward, it's not like he's going to be your answer, right? However, the beginning of this schedule is daunting, right? So I do think that Flacco probably would be the leader in the clubhouse for me to start games early, just because he's been there before, and they kind of owe it to the veterans on this roster to certainly try to go win games. And I think that comes first and foremost. And if you lose that again, where you're playing a guy that doesn't give you the best chance to win like they did last year, if that becomes the theme again, you're going to lose this locker room. As we saw in the first 8 weeks last year, where it was evident that Watson wasn't their best chance to win. So I think that you have to do that first and foremost. However, I do think that they all have a path to start. I think the guy that for me that makes the most sense to want to start would be Shedeur Sanders. I think he has the highest ceiling. I think they took Gabriel and we like him here. They took him before Shedeur, but it wasn't in their plans to take Shedeur, right? So when you take Gabriel there in the third round, it's like, oh, hey, he might be something. At least he can be a long-term backup. But when you take Shedeur, you're taking him with the upside of, hey, he could go win this job and potentially become our long-term answer. So if you wanted anybody to jump up and grab this job, I think it would be him. It's so valuable in the NFL to have a rookie quarterback, manning your team starting, and just to have a guy on a rookie contract, it changes the way you can put players around you for 4 years. So, I think that that would be the ideal outcome. And I think that all of that is on the table at this point.
Yeah, again, they want one of those guys, be it Pickett, be it Sanders, be it Gabriel, to make it so, man, everybody knows this guy should be the starter. And if one of them doesn't do it, I think Joe Flacco ends up taking the snap week one, unless somebody wins the job. Former NFL head coach Herm Edwards, talking about Shedeur Sanders. Take a listen to this.
Especially when the preseason starts, he's going to find a way to beat those guys out. That's just my opinion. The eye test tells me at the end of the day. Now, I've known him since he was a little kid, but I just think his makeup, what he's all about, felt like he got slighted in the draft, and I will agree with him. He did. Not saying maybe he should have been the first player picked. I'm not saying that. But I think there's a lot that went into that, why he dropped so much. And I don't think it had anything to do with football. But the other things that go along with football, I think the glare of who he is, who his father is, I think a lot of teams were hesitant worried that they didn't want that in their locker room. But when you meet the kid and you meet what he's about, he's a pro. He's a pro. He knows how to do things. He goes about it the right way. So I just think when the lights come on and they start playing in the preseason, look out. I think he's going to do good.
It'll be interesting. And I don't have enough of a sense about it. It wouldn't surprise me. It also wouldn't surprise me if he struggles some at first.
Yeah, I will say this to Herm's point. You know, the narratives about Shedeur before he came to Cleveland, so far he has been pitch perfect here. In his interviews, he's answered every question the right way. He has been in early by all accounts. He stays late after practice by all accounts. When asked about reps and this and that and why he hasn't gotten reps with the ones, he said, I'm just getting ready. You know, I'm just preparing for my opportunity. He's answered every question perfectly. It appears when you see his teammates around him, they gravitate to him. He has kind of that moxie. So there is something there and something to that, in my opinion. You know, I think that, I think it's very possible that we could get into, you know, the most important days, I think, are going to be these joint practices, right? When you're going to see these joint practices and these guys get opportunities against the former, you know, Super Bowl champions, you know, and then they get into their preseason games and how do they perform there and how do they look and how do they command the offense, and I think that's going to be a lot of it. I think what we'll see is, you know, from the beginning, we've seen Flacco with limited reps because he doesn't need him, right? They know who he is. He knows the offense. But I think what you'll start to notice is as we go through the training camp and in the preseason, if you start to see Flacco kind of emerge to the front and he's getting more reps in practice and things like that, then they have less of a belief in the other three and more of a tendency towards, hey, we got to get him ready to start the season. And Flacco's reps will take a huge uptick. But until then, I think they're going to try to give everybody a shot and everybody a chance to win this thing. I agree with Herm on a lot of what he said there.
Yeah, and again, I want to see it. I don't question it. And if there's a guy I trust Herm Edwards, who's coached in the league and has coached at college.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this: wide receiver is thin. Have you? Are there guys that I'm being kind? Are there guys out there to be had via trade, even on cut down? What are you monitoring relative to wide receivers?
So I've been doing a lot of work on this because it is so thin. Like, you know, Mike Woods, I'm not really intrigued. I think I kind of know who he is. David Bell, same thing. Like, you know, after Jamari Thrash, you know, you have some faith in that hopefully Cedric Tillman can return to form before his concussion last year. And then you have Jerry Jeudy, and Deontay Johnson is kind of a wild card at this point, although he could elevate your room. But after that and Thrash, it's like, you don't really, there's nothing, mystery of intrigue there. They're just not deep. There's a bunch of guys out there with weird numbers running around, and they've got a ton of them. And so yeah, they need wide receivers, and they need guys that have some pedigree, in my opinion. So, you know, I have identified like 3 teams, I think, that have a surplus of guys that they should be watching. So Green Bay, first of all, is loaded at wide receiver, not in, you know, on the high end, but they did take Matthew Golden in the first round. They have Romeo Doubs. They have Jalen Reed. They drafted Savion Williams as well. And then they have a guy like Christian Watson, who is in a contract year, Dave, and who's been injured. So they have to make a decision on a guy like him while Dontavian Wicks came on strong. McCole Hardman, they signed in free agency. They can't keep all these guys. And any one of them, particularly the younger guys like Watson, I think would be worth like a late round draft pick flyer to bring in. If they aren't planning on extending him, you would think they would want to get something back for him. Indy has the same kind of deal with Alec Pierce, right? They drafted A.D. Mitchell. If he comes on strong, do they want to keep Alec Pierce, who's been injured in and out of the lineup? they want to give him an extension with Pittman around there, Ashton Doolin, guys that they like and they know are going to be there. And then the other team is New England, who has a ton of wide receivers and a ton of like second round guys and third round guys that are of intrigue. Jalen Polk, Kendrick Bourne, and Javon Baker are three at the bottom of their wide receiver depth chart. Now that they've added Diggs and Mac Hollins, and they love Demario Douglas and stuff like that. Like those guys all intrigue me because they're younger guys that you could bring in and still see that upside. Like I don't want to give a 29-year-old reps that take them away from Jamari Thrash. I want to find out who Jamari Thrash is. But if you bring in a guy like Jalen Polk or a guy like Javon Baker, who also is young and has a high upside, that's the kind of move I would like for the Browns to watch for cut downs on, and even before cut downs, maybe flip a late round draft pick to add some talent to this roster.
Brad Ward from the Orange and Brown Report and the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. And I can step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Brad Ward from the Orange and Brown Report, the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Why is Cleveland football the only team that I feel like always tells their fan base, we're going to wait till next year. We get one of the top 2 picks in the draft. We're going to wait till next year. We're going to trade away so we can get something next year. Like, how do you sell that to your fans? You want to buy a new stadium. You want the taxpayers to pay for your stadium, but you give us trash to watch. Who could get excited to go 4-13, 5-12, 3-14? And then you tell them when you have a chance to take a good player, you say, we're just going to wait till next year. I feel like you're wasting draft picks on a quarterback just so you can say, we're going to get our guy next year. Please make that make sense. How do you sell to the Browns fans, the diehards who spend their hard-earned money? Man, we're just going to wait till next year. Haslam is the problem. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Brad, I get it. 3-4 leaves a really bad memory in your mind, but the year before that, and even leading into that, you thought you were a playoff team that was going to make a deep run.
Yeah, expectations were much different than what the outcome was last year. So I get it. I get the frustration there with not, kind of alluding to not taking Travis Hunter and trading back, but it was a no-brainer to push a first-round pick into this year, add a first-round pick, because ultimately, this didn't appear to be the class with a ton of, opportunity at quarterback in the first round, right? Now they've got some really interesting situation here with these guys, right? With Gabriel and Sanders. But you learn about them this year. You find out while trying to compete. And if it doesn't work out, and if they aren't the guy by, without any reasonable, doubt, right? Like, there's a threshold there that they have to overcome for me to keep me from spending those 2 firsts on a franchise quarterback next year. So it's not like it's like, it's hard to say wait till next year. And it's not really saying wait till next year, Dave, but it's like, well, if these guys don't work, we can get the guy in the first round next year. We got 2 firsts. We've got enough ammunition to do it. 40 years of looking for a starting quarterback, a real swing at this with 2 first-round picks, I think is something that's really difficult to pass up. And as far as Travis Hunter goes, Jacksonville, I mean, they made that trade. A lot of people haven't really talked about this. The GM made that trade for him without even seeing their team, or they have a new coach. They haven't been in practice together. It was kind of a bold move. We'll see how it works out for them. He's a tremendous talent for sure. But without even seeing my team practice or knowing, what exactly you have with your coach, to make that kind of a move out of the gate is kind of bold. So we'll see how that works out too.
What are your thoughts about Martin Emerson? Do you think the Browns extend him going into his final year? There's no fifth-year option because he wasn't a first-round pick. So regressed. I mean, there's no other way to say it. He didn't play as well last year as did the year before, so he kind of took a step back.
Yeah, it's a fickle position, Dave. I mean, like, look at Sauce Gardner, right? Like, he took a big step back last year, too. Somebody that you can compare talent-wise to him that didn't have a good year at corner, and it's like that. So you hope he bounces back. I mean, who did really have a great year last year, right? Besides Jerry Jeudy. But at the same time, he's got to go earn it. I think you treat him the same way you treated Delpit in his contract year. You're giving him an opportunity to go prove that he can earn that contract, that extension. You want to give him that extension, but he's got to prove it at this point. So it's kind of a similar situation to, I think they did the same thing with Conklin a couple years back, where around December, late in the fall, maybe they played well and you want to give them an extension, make sure they don't see the open market. That makes sense. I've also heard some people say there's an extension out there for either Greg Newsome or Emerson, whoever earns it. So, who plays better between the two of them? Maybe you give them one extension. If they both play great. But I am rooting for Emerson to earn that. I think he does bounce back.
What are you paying attention to as we move into training camp? What, first little bit of training camp, we're not going to know anything about the quarterbacks. I'm with you until joint practices. But what are you paying attention to early in training camp?
So I was trying to pay attention to the offense, what they want to do. And a lot of guys, the offensive line has spoken a lot to it. I thought Mike Bloomgren was great talking the other day. You want your offensive line to be that kind of guy, right? Like kind of a, tough, harder approach to things. At least that's what this offensive line was used to with Bill Callahan. And it feels like you're getting back to that. You're getting back to some of those core concepts and schemes in the run game. I see a lot of running backs involved. I see a lot of tight ends involved out there from the very little snapshot that we saw. So now that may be due to lack of wide receiver talent. Jerry Jeudy looks great, right? Cedric Tillman was out a couple days in minicamp, but Harold Fannin and Njoku, Jerry Jeudy, these two new running backs, those seem like the key weapons that at least they on offense were utilizing. I think this defense can be very good. I think they can bounce right back and be a top 5 defense if it all clicks for them. So they look tremendous up front. And even losing JOK, as sad as that is, they did a nice job of bringing in some depth with Javon Baker, and they've got Diabate kind of coming on, bringing Devin Bush back. I feel like at all 3 levels, the main question for me on the defense is Ronnie Hickman, right? I expected them, this is kind of interesting, and I'll leave it with this. I expected them to go bigger at free safety, and they didn't. They went KZ and they went Jenkins, older veterans, right? Which tells me they want Hickman to kind of win that job, which is interesting because I don't know how I feel about that. We'll have to see how that plays out.
Yeah, Jim Schwartz made it abundantly clear they expect a big year out of Hickman when he met with the media. All right, before I let you go, running back coach Deuce Staley talking about going back to Kevin Stefanski's running style in this offense.
Kevin's done a good job, man. He all off season we talked about, of course, what you just said, just rebuilding the run game, going back to day one when Kevin got here, going back to when he was in Minnesota running wide zone. You know, that's one of our staples, and that's what we're going to stick to, and we have the backs for that.
And he's referring to those rookies. Let me ask you this. If this run game approaches what it was a couple years ago, how good can this team be?
I don't know. See, the NFL is so weird like this, Dave, and I try to tell people this because people are like, oh, this is going to be a bad team. You know, PFF ranks them the 32nd roster, although strangely enough, 3 years ago, with almost the same exact players on the roster, they were in the top 5. So explain that to me. But either way, it's about what you can get from your quarterback position is going to be absolutely huge, right? If you could get top 20 play from your quarterback position, and your run game is what it was in 20, right? 22, 23. I could see them competing for a playoff spot, playing meaningful football in December, which would be huge. But you know, that I think it has to be the goal. Like, you can no longer operate without a running game. They got a magic period of time there from Joe Flacco at the end of 23 with no running game at the end of that season, and trying to run out the clock with screens and him throwing the ball all over the place, right? It just doesn't work. This is going to be a team that's going to have to be able to run the ball and play really good defense and get average to good quarterback play. And I think they can win some games that way. It's a tough schedule, but the schedule never turns out the way it looks at first, Dave. It never does. How many years have we looked at the schedule and been like, that's really tough, and they end up playing like 6 backups? You never know. You never know.
Brad Ward, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Brad.
You're the best, Dave. Thank you for having me.
Brad Ward, make sure you check him out. Orange and Brown Reports. He also is the co-host of the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Film breakdown, video analysis with his takeaways from minicamp. That's straight ahead on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's welcome in Lance Reisland from the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com. Lance, you were out at mandatory minicamp all 3 days that were available to the media. Let's begin with some takeaways. Everybody wants to talk about the young quarterbacks and what you saw from them. Take us through what we're going to see and what your thoughts were with Sanders, Gabriel, and the quarterbacks.
Well, it's very interesting. So these guys did a great job, I thought, since rookie minicamp. I've had a chance to go to, the rookie minicamp, the voluntary OTAs, and now the mandatory minicamp, and they made great strides. They made great strides with their footwork. They made great strides with their processing. They were late on some things. You're going to see here, Sanders does a really nice job throwing a slant here to Floria. You're going to see Gabriel with a really nice throw to Fannin. Fannon's been really impressive. But the quarterbacks as a whole, I don't think they're ready to play, but what they are, they're ready to continue to get better and learn from two really good guys in Flacco and Pickett in terms of learning the offense and knowing what they're doing. They don't have a chance to be successful until they learn this whole scheme. That'll give them the best chance.
So when you look at the quarterbacks and including Pickett and Flacco, who do you think is most ready to play? Who do you think likely plays?
Well, for me, everybody has their own take on it, but for me at practice, just because not only his skill set but the skill set he allows his teammates to have, I think it's Joe Flacco, and I don't think it's close. And the reason why is because it allows everybody else to play faster. One of the things the Browns struggle with is getting off the slow starts, and with Flacco, knowing that he knows the offense, knowing that he's been around so long, he gives you the opportunity to practice at full speed without having to go through all of the walkthroughs and progressions you take with new guys when they're learning a system. I think he's throwing the ball very well. I think he fits the scheme very well. I think more than one quarterback obviously plays this year, but that staff right now, they got to be thinking about winning, and I think Joe Flacco, without question, gives them the best chance going into Week 1.
Another area that looks to be a strength, looks to be improved, is the defensive line. So we've talked, and we think it has a chance to be elite. Take us through what we saw and what we're going to see relative to the defensive line.
Well, the one thing you saw with the defensive line is that these guys can all run. I was so impressed with their ability to move, lateral movement, their short area burst, their ability to sprint off the ball. And they're 8 or 9 deep, so you're going to see a little hoop drill here with Miles and Alex Wright, explosive. Then you're going to see, this is probably my favorite guy at camp, Malik Collins, just a guy with a tremendous motor. I will say this, I've gotten a chance to be right next to Myles Garrett, practice now for 3 or 4 years. There's nothing quite like a Myles Garrett in terms of his ability to move. He looks like a DB and he's 290 pounds. Then you're going to see all these other guys. I thought Mason Graham did a great job. Him and Malik Collins inside are going to cause a lot of problems for the slower guards with the slower lateral movement. But this defensive line, like I said, it's very, very deep. They're position flexible. They give Jim Schwartz exactly what he wants with a big rotation. 2 big defensive tackles that can anchor in there on first and second down. Not to mention you got Shelby Harris and you got Hall coming back and Obo and just a really deep bunch. Very impressive. I think this is their best position group and allows them to be in games because I think their offensive line is doing well as well.
When you look at those defensive tackles, fair to say they're more athletic and maybe quicker than they have been the last couple of years, and something Jim Schwartz needs for his wide 9 to be as successful as it can be?
Oh, absolutely. So what you get the best of both worlds with both of these guys, right? So you get guys who are 300 plus pounds who can anchor in there, right? So you get first and second down, you get those big double team, whether it's zone or gap. You're going to get the big guard and tackle blocking the defensive tackle. And that guy's got to make sure that he doesn't get moved. He's got to anchor in his spot and maintain his gap. But what makes these two special, in my opinion, is now they can move out. They can move out to that wide 3, wide 5, wide 9 like you're talking about, and they can rush the passer. So they can play on all 3 downs. They're position flexible. They're fast enough to play on the outside if they like a matchup with Miles inside. It gives this defensive line a lot of versatility, and it allows Miles to be creative, and it allows Jim Schwartz to be creative. But yes, so I still think they have the same anchor. Dalvin Thompson did a great job against the run, and I appreciate his efforts. But now you got guys who could do that and rush the passer.
So another area of concern, obviously, is the offensive line. What did you see from the offensive line? They were banged up and not really healthy last year. What about the O-line this year?
Well, you're going to see the first thing that I saw without question is DeJuan Jones. And DeJuan Jones, the question can be, and you're going to see him here, they're going to work a little double team with Joe Bitonio. They're just kind of going through walkthroughs and stuff like that. But what you see out of him is you see these quick feet come back. And that has to do with his ability to be healthy. Now, he's still a tremendously big human. Even out there, he is just massive. But now that he's got his weight down, he said his weight's down 20, 25 pounds. Now he can move his feet. Now he can get back to being that left tackle, which is key to be leaner to be able to block the Myles Garrett's of the world, which is another point. He has got to block Myles every day in practice, which is only going to make him better because Myles is as good as it gets. And like I said, I've watched a lot of football in my life. There's nothing quite like watching Myles Garrett come around the edge. It's just you don't know how he's ever blocked. I don't know how he doesn't have 30 sacks a year. But DeJuan Jones is in shape. But when you look at their whole offensive line, they are all physically in great shape. Bitonio, Posett, Teller, the new guy, all these guys, Conklin, they're all just physically fit.
A lot is made of the quarterback, and that's important. I would argue that the offensive line getting back to what it was might even be more important to help whomever is at quarterback.
Well, you just said it. So let's go through what makes a successful team, right? It starts in the trenches. So if you can run the ball on first down, get to second and medium, now you've made it easier for your quarterback and your offensive coordinator. If you can win first down on defense, now you get to let this elite pass rush get wild, and you get these corners who can really cover. You get them to create some turnovers, things like that. So it all ties hand in hand. But I tell you what, I think the Browns are highly competitive in most games because of that offensive defensive line. Both have a chance to be really good, and I think that defensive line has the potential to be a top 5, top 10 group in the NFL.
One area that needs some upgrading, I believe, and I think you do too, wide receiver. 2 guys that have kind of grabbed some attention are Luke Floria and Kashawn Davis. Take us through what we're going to see here and why you like both of these guys.
Well, first thing you get Judy, you get Deontay Johnson, and you get Tillman. I think these guys can all be really impactful guys. Deontay Johnson. So first thing you see is a really good dig route here by Jerry Judy, and what Jerry Judy does very well. He practices very hard. You see a run after catch. These guys all competed at a high level, so he did a really nice job. Then you get Deontay Johnson, who's going to run speed out. Obviously, he's got to keep himself together off the field, but what a talented guy. Then you see Luke Floria with a little speed out here. Floria and Caden Davis have been so impressive to me. Make plays every single day. They kind of fit that slot route that the Browns have needed, a guy who can get easy yards. Now, they're not prototypical, and I understand they have limitations, but the thing that kind of the overlying thing I saw from some of these young guys is they like football, and it's not really about their weaknesses, it's about their strengths and what they bring to the team. And both of these guys are really good. Now, if you have Tillman, Deontay Johnson, and Judy as your top guys, then you have one of these guys play the slot. I think you got a makings of a much more productive receiving core than people think. And as if people have ever listened to you and I, we've wanted them to take a receiver for a number of years now.
Yeah, is it legit that Floria and Davis could end up, grabbing a spot at least on the practice squad to develop even a little bit more?
I think so. Caden Davis is a little bit outside, so I think it makes it tougher for him, though he's been ultra productive in every day that I've seen him play. First in line, first in all the drills. He does a great job. Luke Floria is right behind him. Now, Floria gives him that slot receiver that they haven't had, so I truly believe he has a chance to make this team. And if he's a practice squad guy, he gives them a great look at what they'll see with the NFL slot receivers. But yeah, I know Floria is undersized. Maybe doesn't have the true breakaway speed, but he reminds you a lot of those slot receivers from the New England Patriots, right? Edelman, Wes Welker, guys who just find a way to get open. They're really good in a small space. They have great short area bursts, lateral quickness, etc. So I truly believe that Luke Floria has a chance to make this team, just because not only is he playing at a high level, but he brings the Browns offense what they don't have.
And Floria from Kent State, just like Julian Edelman. So we'll see. All right, linebackers. What did you think of them?
Well, I tell you what, a much better group than I thought. Obviously, living JOK is a problem, but what they have is they have length, they have athleticism, and they got a pretty stud rookie, I think. So this is Diabate, who physically has always been impressing me. But again, a bunch of guys who look in great shape. Jordan Hicks is definitely the leader here. He's a guy who moves his feet in his 30s. He really looks good too. Okay, then you have Carson Schlesinger. And Schlesinger to me is a guy that I was completely wrong in the draft process. And what I mean by that is, first of all, he's a lot thicker than what you see on film. He's really thick. He's got a lower body. He's got tree trunk legs. So I think this Browns linebacking core, you never replace a guy like JOK, but if you can have guys that play as a unit, and these guys in Jim Schwartz's defense have to be guys that tackle. And, Schlesinger led the country last year in tackles. Diabate can tackle. Hicks is a tackler. Long, athletic guys. This is a much better position group than I thought.
Yeah, and again, Diabate is a guy that has been around a little bit, so it's interesting. Undrafted free agent, and you've kind of seen him get better and better. All right, let's dive into the running back position. How important is that for the Browns to do what they want to do for Quinshon Judkins and Dylan Sampson to be what they think they are, being drafted in the first 4 rounds?
Well, Judkins is a guy I was higher on. Trevion Henderson coming out of the draft, but what a talented guy this is. He once again, I was not completely right at all on his breakdown. So what he does in practice, he's got tremendously quick feet in the hole, and his ability, he's got great contact balance. He's got great balance underneath him. You're gonna see him dip in and then dip out, and then he has that breakaway speed that not a lot of people, including myself, didn't know that he had. And so he gives you that little back, that scat back mentality, but he is 220 pounds plus, right? So he's got a really thick lower body. I think Sampson gives him a good 1-2 punch on first and second down. I've said this before, but I think Ford now gets back to being really, really productive in his role as a third down back. I think he was asked to do too much and do a little bit out of his role. And then I think Pierre Strong runs really, really hard too. So I think that running back room, you're never going to replace Nick Chubb, both as a football player and as a person. But these guys are all great kids. They all work really hard. They're soft-spoken, and they're going to make Browns fans very happy. They all work really, really hard. This Judkins kid is going to be pretty special.
Before I let you go, so minicamp wrapped up. Up next is training camp, where they put on pads. What are you going to pay attention to early on in training camp?
Well, you want to see the processing ability. There's two things, right? You want to see the processing ability of those young quarterbacks and the old guys too, and how did they make the reads, and does the live pressure, the live atmosphere around, does that change their mentality? Does that change their poise, their tempo, etc.? Then I want to see this defensive line. Are they as good as I think they are? Like I said, I've been around this defensive line now a couple years, and they had a really good defensive line a few years ago. I think this defensive line is better. I think Mason Graham is legit. I think Malik Collins is a very underrated pickup. Again, a guy that I was kind of starstruck by when I was watching him practice. What a big guy who can move. So I want to see this big. And then I want to see the offensive line compete against them. And if they can be physical with each other during camp without getting injured, I think that'll really bode well for them, being really strong in the trenches leading into the season opener.
Lance Rosland, Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, is always great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Lance.
As always, thanks for having me.
Lance Rosland, make sure you check him out. Always really good film breakdown and video analysis. cleveland.com and the Plain Dealer. We're going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, Jacob Roach from the Orange and Brown Report. Sports4CLE. Be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Former college and NFL quarterback Danny Cannell on the situation Shedeur finds himself in with the Browns heading into training camp.
I think Shedeur Sanders is in a phenomenal position. I think he should be pumped up that they're saying, hey, we're not ready to name a starter yet. It's most likely going to be Joe Flacco. That's why they brought him in. He's somebody who brings some stability, who can run a system. He's been around the league for so long, but I don't think that means he'll be the guy from start to finish. And Shedeur, by all accounts, all the controversy, all the conversation that happened during the draft and afterwards, I think he's handled himself better than anybody. He hasn't complained. He's gone in there with the right mindset. By all accounts, he's impressing. He's played in a lot of different systems. He's had to pick up and learn different concepts, and this is just another one for him. He's been around a professional and his dad for the time he was born, so he knows what it takes to be a pro and how to prepare like a pro. He's got great work ethic, so I think this is a great opportunity for him to maybe get some significant playing time. What I do think is interesting, typically you would hear more about the third-round pick in Dylan Gabriel than you would about the fifth-round pick in Shedeur Sanders. We know why a lot of that is happening, but I do wonder, where is Dylan Gabriel?
Let's welcome in Jacob Roach from the Orange and Brown Report, Barking Browns podcast. Jacob, Kevin Stefanski's come out and said repeatedly, not to read too much into it, that all four are still in that quarterback competition, being Flacco, Pickett, Sanders, and Gabriel. I tend to believe him. I think the veterans are ahead of the rookies, just because they always are.
And at least for the off-season workout program, like where they were like, oh, we're going to get Flacco X amount of reps, some things like that. And I know he talked about not like doing it equally distributed and it was changing day to day, but I think they kind of had a feel on how they wanted to bring them along. Like you talk about it, yeah, hey, they're ahead of the rookies. Flacco and Pickett should absolutely be ahead of the rookies at this point, just because they've had, time in the NFL and Flacco's been in this system and the rookies are kind of getting up to speed. And that's kind of where I look at them in terms of what has happened so far, that they're just kind of getting up to speed, learning the offense, getting a feel, because by all accounts from people that have been there and rookie camp and been there at OTAs and mandatory camp, both Gabriel and Shedeur have made progress. They have seen improvement. They have seen comfort in the system and what they're doing. But yeah, they're just behind the eight ball, so to speak. They got to get caught up with those veterans, and then you can, go from there.
When do you think this actually takes shape? At what point in time do you start really saying, all right, this guy's working with the one? When is that in training camp?
I think once you get to them joint practices. So they got a couple different joint practice situations. The Panthers are first, and then the Eagles, and leading up to the first and second preseason game. And you'll get a week or so, week and a half, 2 weeks of training camp before that happens, and that will, I think, be where the Browns start to make decisions like, is Dylan Gabriel or Shadur Sanders going to be ready enough for week 1? I'm not sure they will. So that's when I think you get to those joint practices where you start seeing more Flacco, whereas maybe the first week or so of camp, you might not see as much of those veterans, and will probably get most of the preseason reps will probably go to the rookies. But those joint practices, coaches talk about them every year as those being more important than preseason games, being the most important thing to getting ready for the season, especially that second set of joint practices against the Eagles. I think you'll be able to read into reps at that time, especially to see where they kind of feel they're going to be.
So they wrapped up minicamp. They go away for 6 weeks, 5-6 weeks until training camp. What were your takeaways from minicamp? And again, they're not even in pads at this point.
I think that it felt more energetic. I think maybe something. So one thing that Pete Smith always said at the OBR that Deshaun Watson was an energy vampire last year and like was just sucking the life out of everything. And yeah, we had the sad news about Nick Chubb, not returning and going into Houston, but it felt like there was more optimism, more excitement. And yeah, people are arguing about the quarterbacks and stuff, but that's because I think they're excited about what Shadur Sanders could be or what Dylan Gabriel could be, or the fact that they think that Joe Flacco still has some juice in his arm. That was one thing that I really liked and really noticed was, yeah, he looks like he can still push the ball vertically down the field at 41 years old. I'm not super worried about that aspect of it. But one thing that I think really caught me was DeJuan Jones. I think seeing DeJuan Jones leaner and being able to move the way he was moving was one of those things where, yeah, like you said, you're in shorts and helmets. There's not a lot there. I need to see him do it once pads come on. But like that was something that had to happen for you to feel good about DeJuan Jones. Was he had to drop some weight. He had to be able to improve his movement and his cardio. And with what the information we've been given, we've seen a step in that right direction. And so I was very happy to see that. And then I think Alex Wright looks really healthy and was moving around really well. So if my optimism in terms of people being healthy and being ready and there being things to be optimistic about, that's kind of where I left minicamp, just feeling like, yeah, we're, I think, in a much better place than we were last year.
So veteran offensive lineman Jack Conklin talked about the new offensive line coach Mike Bloomgren and the expectations for the run game this year.
Yes, he's going to, again, I think it's like what we were talking about earlier. It's holding you to that accountability and that standard. And as an offensive line, we work in such unison with 5 guys. When one guy's lacking, the whole unit is going to look bad. And we have to have that accountability starting from the coach who's going to push us no matter what, even the older guys, to expect that accountability and that unison with the group. And that's something that we were lacking last year. And so far this year, it looks like we have that back.
Joel also said that this feels like a 2020-2021 install.
Yes.
With what the offense feels like and what it's going to look like in September. Do you buy that, feel that as well?
Definitely. It's huge. It's going back to really what Coach Stefanski is known for, and what his specialty is, and frankly what I think this team's makeup specialty is. And, we're really excited in the locker room, really excited in the O-line room to be getting back to that offense.
An offensive line that's excited about something is usually a good thing because they weren't excited about anything last year.
No, it did not. That experiment failed miserably very quickly last year. I really love hearing this because there's been a lot of conversation about like revamping this run game and how do you fix the run game? And it's like, well, you didn't make a lot of changes on the offensive line. So why is there reason to believe that the run game behind this offensive line will be different than it was in 2024? And they're playing to the strengths of this offensive line. This offensive line, as they were talking about with the 2020 and 2021 install, was built to run that standard wide zone, outside zone, kind of scheme that Kevin has been famous for, really got him that job, working under Kubiak and that sort of thing, where he has that influence on that in those systems. And to me, it's like, I think they're automatically better just A, being healthy, and B, being in the system that they're built to run. Like that plays to their strengths and their abilities as an offensive line. Like what they do well is that sort of system. So right there, I think getting them back to what they are best at, that automatically makes the offensive line better after a dreadful year. And I just really like there's been a lot around Bloomgren. You can tell how I think the offensive line seems like they're responding more to him than they did to Dickerson. There's a lot more fire and energy and like, He gets in the face of them, wants to challenge them, is really pushing them. We'll see if the results pan out once they put pads on, but it just seems like the energy surrounding the offensive line and the scheme and their coach is just miles better than it was last year.
So, by all accounts, they're going back to that Stefanski type of running system. Deuce Staley, the running backs coach, was asked about the new rookie running backs, Sampson and Junkins. Are they similar?
No, they're different. Two different guys. I mean, Dylan is able to go play in the slot, and also he's able to go and play on third down and maybe sprinkle in a little second down. I'm not saying Q can't play on third down, but I'm just looking at what we can do with Dylan as far as a receiver. And we'll be able to do a little something with Q receiver too, but totally different, so don't think about it like that.
It's kind of interesting. The running that, we've kind of said it's not like a third down back, and we've kind of made them, they're more similar. Both of them can be effective.
Yeah, I think that their skill sets complements each other so well. And that's like when they drafted Dylan Sampson in the 4th round, part of the enthusiasm that I had in that situation was like, okay, you have the Thunder, in Quinshon Judkins, and now you got the Lightning in Dylan Sampson. It's like, but like, Coach Staley said, it's not that Judkins doesn't have speed and he's just a power back, or that Sampson doesn't have good contact balance and he won't go down unless you form tackle him. But it's like where there is kind of a deficiency in one, the other kind of makes up for it. And that is how you build a well-balanced attack to where you can pull Judkins on third down and keep him fresh for the 4th quarter, because Dylan Sampson as a wide receiver and as a running back in some of those situations can get the job done, and vice versa, and they can just rotate through. When they were at their best under Kevin Stefanski in 2020 and 2021, it's when they could just freely switch Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt out, so that the running back that was out there was, maybe a change of pace, a little bit of a different style, but he was also fresh. And they were able to put Kareem Hunt in the slot as a wide receiver, like they've talked about with Dylan Sampson. And it's just, there's so many eerie similarities between those couple of years and what the roster looks like right now. And that's reason for excitement, in my opinion.
Well, and so the young tight end at that point was David Njoku. Now it's Harold Fannin. What have you thought about what we've seen and heard about Fannin at minicamp?
I think he's kind of confirmed what I thought he was, what I saw on tape at Bowling Green and that sort of thing. He's still kind of a work in progress as a blocker, just coming from the MAC, and he just really wasn't taught like how to play how to block really well. I think that's just something he needs coached up on. But he looks like a big-bodied wide receiver. He can play in the slot. You can play him in line with Njoku. And he just creates so much after the catch. It just looks so effortless for him. Like, he's got a weird running style. It kind of like at times will look a little bit clunky, but like he eats up ground in a hurry. And it's just, he can play vertically. And if you want to match up, it's just like with David Njoku, match up a linebacker against him. Go right ahead. You're not going to like what happens if the quarterback finds him when you're trying to cover him with the linebacker. But like, we've talked about the deficiencies at the wide receiver room, ad nauseum, because we've got some major concerns after Jerry Jeudy. And I think he can easily be that number 4 guy. Like, if you want to say it's Jeudy and Tillman and Njoku, and then Fannin might be 4th on the team in targets, because I think he's such a good, reliable pass catcher who can create extra yardage, and that was a key to their 2023 run with Joe Flacco. He could make some crazy throws, but he also was giving his guys opportunities to create with the ball in their hand, and you saw some of that from Fannin so far this in minicamp.
You kind of went where I was going. So we know the receiving core is kind of thin. Do Fannin and potential? You heard Deuce Staley talk about Sampson play in the slot. Does that kind of help minimize what you might have relative to a lack of wide receivers?
It certainly makes me feel better, because you know that somebody can play that role, so to speak. And then it kind of makes you feel better about banking a little bit on Deontay Johnson, because you're like, if this guy can get his head on straight, it's like, but he's very talented, and you're like, well, there may be less pressure on him, and make it easier for him to produce what they need him to produce, because Fannin and Sampson can do those sorts of things. And we've seen them line Sampson out in the slot and at wide receiver and play some of these things. So they're very much already toying with that idea, kind of tinkering, seeing what they can do in that sort of sense. And I love that because it brings creativity back to the offense. And that's some of the stuff I love from Stefanski, some of the misdirection and things. Like you could run Sampson from the slot and run an end around and it's a running back. You own an outside zone play. So he's even better at running, some of those trick plays or something. Cause I love what he does when he gets on the outside and turns the corner and he explodes, gets up to that top speed and he could, make a house call. But having these guys that are versatile weapons that can move all over, that's where the deception comes from and makes it harder for defenses to key up and be like, well, it's 3rd and 3. They really could do anything. Sampson's out wide. Maybe they run a wide receiver screen pass. Maybe he runs an end around. Maybe they run it up the gut with Jerome Ford or Quinshon Judkins. Like there's a million possibilities. And when you're able to do that and keep a defense guessing, it takes some of the pressure off of your quarterback, especially if it's one of these young guys.
Jacob Roach, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jacob.
Thanks, guys.
Jacob Roach, make sure you check him out. Writes for the Orange and Brown Report, also hosts the Barking Browns podcast. That's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. Have a great weekend. We will see you back here Monday at 4 on Sports for CLE.